Good afternoon, everyone. I want to call to order today's meeting of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. Madam Secretary, I'd like to note that all members are present, and I want to thank everyone for being here and everybody who's listening on the internet as well. Today, we are going to be hearing two bills, and we also will be having a work session. I'd like to start with the work session and turn it over to our policy analyst, Nick Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nick Anthony from the Research Division. For the record, before the committee today, there is one bill on work session. It is Senate Joint Resolution 7, which proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to establish certain rights relating to reproductive health, sponsored by Senators Cannizzaro et al., was heard in this committee in a joint meeting with the Assembly Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections on March 23rd. As discussed earlier, SJR 7 proposes to amend the Nevada Constitution to guarantee a fundamental right to reproductive freedom, authorizes the state to regulate abortion care, and prevents the state from penalizing certain actions relating to reproductive freedom. There is a conceptual amendment proposed by Senator Cannizzaro, which was presented to this body at the hearing. It is attached. The amendment basically does four things. It amends subsection 4 to prohibit penalizing acts consistent with. Also amends subsection 4 to include providing abortion care, providing reproductive care services to an individual who's granted their voluntary consent. Amends subsection 5 to add the words or entity, and adds a new subsection 6 stating that nothing herein in the bill narrows or limits the rights to equality and equal protection. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Director Anthony. And I definitely want to thank the Majority Leader for all her hard work on SJR 7 and for, assuming this moves forward, giving our constituents the chance to weigh in on protecting these rights. With that, I would open it up for a motion. Majority Leader Cannizzaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to add one small detail to this that we did catch, and it was in the small print version of the bill, but then it wasn't on Nellis, and it made its way into this conceptual amendment in section 25.1, where it says birth control, vasectomy, tubal. It says litigation. It should say ligation. And so there was one version of the bill that had it as litigation and one version that had it as ligation. So I would just ask for that technical change to be included as part of the amendments.
Thank you very much for catching that, Majority Leader. And with that, I would open this up for a motion.
Motion to amend and do pass with the correction of the spelling.
I have a motion for amend and do pass by Senator Daly with the correction of that spelling error. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a second for Majority Leader Cannizzaro. Any discussion on the motion? Senator Sievers-Gansert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to oppose the motion based on some discussions that we had during the hearing itself. So in 1990, Nevadans passed the Freedom of Choice Act that protected a woman's right to choose an abortion up to 24 weeks with certain exceptions based on the life and health of the mother. And during our discussions, we also talked about some current statute around informed consent, and this removes informed consent and has voluntary act, I think is what the words that replace it. It also, we have that 24-week limitation. When you put something in the Constitution that may not be upheld, given the language is extremely broad in the resolution before us. And also there was the you could morally object to participating in an abortion in statute 449.191, and this would potentially also supersede those statutes that I just outlined. And then, there was also discussion about birth control. And what I know as someone who's been serving as a senator since 2016, in 2017, we had a bill, SB 233, that expanded dispensing of prescription birth control to 12 months, from 3 months to 12 months. We also expanded access via allowing pharmacists to dispense birth control. In 2021, that was Senate Bill 190. And then even this year, we have another bill, SB 280, before us that will allow birth control to be dispensed to minors without parental consent. And they also have medicines for STDs as well. So I think the state of Nevada has shown that they have affirmed in statute the right for a woman to choose an abortion with certain exceptions, and that in our state, we've seen an expansion of access to birth control. And we also have seen in statute certain protections, such as informed consents, the 24-week limitation, and also the moral objections. You do not have to, your employer cannot force you to participate in an abortion if you morally object to do so. And I think those are all at risk with this resolution, and so therefore I will be opposing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Siebers-Gansert. Any other comments on the motion? Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I obviously am very grateful to this committee for having heard and given us the opportunity to present Senate Joint Resolution number 7. I again need to stress that this is a constitutional amendment that would go to the voters of the people if it is approved in consecutive legislative sessions. So first and foremost, this is a vote of the people. So Nevadans get to choose whether or not this is a fundamental right that they believe they are entitled to, which prior to this summer, I think was a very different discussion, because there was a fundamental right that was well-established, precedented case law, not a constitutional amendment, but case law that interpreted our United States federal Constitution to have an implicit right to privacy, which allowed for patients to make that choice. And then, of course, we have in Nevada the 1990 Freedom of Choice Act, which is, again, a statutory piece that protects that right, but it is statutory. It is not an express fundamental right, and there are very stark differences in that, because what that means is if Nevadans decide that they want to approve this amendment, that right exists, and all statutes would be measured against that right. Again, this does not undo any current statutes. It does not compel the performance of an abortion. Those are very much red herrings that are designed to derail something like this, which is establishing a right. And just frankly do not pertain to this particular amendment. What we have heard is a lot of, in statute, we have all these protections. In statute, these protections are going to make sure that you have the right to access this medical care. But I am obviously impassioned by this, because even this morning, there was a decision from a United States court in Texas that issues a national injunction against coverage for birth control, for cancer screenings, for preventative cancer screenings, for PrEP, and for a ton of pregnancy-related care, because it is statutory and there isn't a right to that. But to me, sitting in here and saying, well, this is we have these things in statute, is just not sufficient, because we have just seen as of this morning that can be stripped from you, because there is no right to those types of things. And for me, as someone who has, as I'm sure so many people have, experienced where you have to come into contact with these very necessary care pieces, be they cancer screenings, be it pregnancy-related care, be it birth control, be it fertility treatments, not being able to have access to those is just beyond my comprehension. And so a vote for Senate Joint Resolution number 7 is a vote to say that we want the people of Nevada to decide whether or not they want to have a fundamental right to have access to that medical care, to that health care. And if you are or have ever spoken to somebody who has needed access to any of that type of care, you know just how essential it is. And to deny Nevadans the right to vote on that, to me, just can't stand. So I would urge my colleagues to vote in support of Senate Joint Resolution number 7, because things that are in statute do not protect us. Things that are our fundamental rights can help us to protect those things and help to ensure that the statutes we pass in this building allow for those rights to be exercised properly. So I will be a yes.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader. Any further comments? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Madam Secretary, if you'd please note that the SGR 7 passed 3 aye and 2 nay. With that, I'm going to hand the gavel over to Vice Chair Daley. I have some bills to present over in the Natural Resources Committee, and appreciate you conducting the hearing so I can run over and present those bills. Thank you, Vice Chair.
Turn it off. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, here we go. We're going to proceed with our, as soon as everybody calms down. Oh, wait. You guys ready? All right, we'll proceed with our first hearing. It's my understanding that the parties or the presenters wanted to hear Senate Bill 327 first. So we'll go ahead and open the hearing on Senate Bill 327 if you want to come up and ready for your presentation. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. Good afternoon, Vice Chair Daley and members of the Senate Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. My name is Teresa Melendez. I'm an Indigenous organizer and Native vote advocate here in Nevada. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi from Southwest Michigan, but have called Nevada home for the last 10 years. My husband's an enrolled citizen of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, so I've called Northern Nevada my home for the last decade. And I have the pleasure today of presenting Senate Bill 327, which are provisions governing polling places and ballot drop boxes on tribal lands. So I have my esteemed colleague and the vice chairman of the Duck Valley Shoshone Paiute Tribes, the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, here with me today, who's going to co-present this bill with me. But before I move forward, I did want to acknowledge we have 4 tribal council members here with us today, and I just wanted to ask them to stand. This is the most tribal council folks we've had at a bill hearing, showing how important this bill is, but I did want to acknowledge those elected officials. If I could ask Treasurer Andrea Martinez to stand, Chairwoman, and Treasurer Martinez is with the Walk River Paiute Tribe. Chairwoman Lone Eagle is with the Summit Lake Paiute Tribe here in Washoe County, and then Chairman Warren Graham of the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe. And then next to me is Arnold Thomas, Vice Chair of the Shoshone Paiute Tribes, the Duck Valley Indian Reservation. So we've got 4 tribes represented in person today. A little bit about the bill. So the bill before you today, in a nutshell, addresses one issue relating to elections. Current law allows for tribes to affirmatively opt in to establish polling places and drop boxes for elections. This bill would simply make an opt-out process. Turning to the section of the bill, Section 1 and 3 of the bill specifically requires county and city clerks to establish a polling place and a drop box for the day of a primary election, presidential preference election, or general election within the boundaries of an Indian reservation or colony. However, an Indian tribe may opt out and elect not to have a polling place or a ballot drop box by submitting a notice within the required statutory time frame in advance of the election. Section 1 applies to county clerks, and Section 3 applies to city clerks. Section 2 and 4 of the bill make similar changes to those in Section 1 and 3. However, these provisions allow an Indian tribe to opt out by submitting a notice within the statutory time frame, but these sections relate to opting out of having early voting locations on an Indian reservation or Indian colony. Section 2 applies to county clerks, and Section 4 applies to city clerks. So the reason that Senator Orenshaw has been working on, we've all been working with him on the wording for this bill, And we've had the good pleasure of working with some of the county clerks and Native vote advocates in the state. And the reason we're presenting this bill today is by state law, current state law, if a tribe requests a polling location, they have that right. There shouldn't be, it's not like an application process. It's supposed to be a right. There have been challenges in the past. So in 2016, there was a Sanchez versus Sagaski case, which allowed tribes to have reservation-based polling locations. And there's been, some challenges with implementation of that law. As yesterday we talked about tribal liaisons. If there was a tribal liaison in the Secretary of State's office, it'd make things a whole lot easier. But in this last election cycle, there were 11 tribes that asked for first-time reservation-based polling locations. Of those 11 tribes, the Shoshone Paiute tribes, the Duck Valley Indian Reservation requested 2 weeks of early vote, election day, and a ballot drop-off box. They were offered a couple days. The county clerk told them they could not accommodate. The tribe eventually sued the county clerk for their polling location opportunities. The Elko Band Colony asked for 2 weeks of early vote and election day. They got a couple days. South Fork Band Council applied for election day and a ballot drop-off box, got nothing. The Wells Band Council applied for election day and a ballot drop-off box, got nothing. Battle Mountain Band Colony, they applied for 2 weeks of early vote and were denied everything, got nothing. The Ely Shoshone tribe, they only asked for election day and they got election day. The Yamba Shoshone tribe, they only asked for election day and they got election day after some work on the back end. But also the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe, they asked for a couple days of early vote. They got exactly what they asked for. The Fort McDermott Paiute Shoshone tribe asked for Monday through Friday of early vote and election day. They got everything they asked for. The Yarrington Paiute tribe, they asked for election day and a ballot drop-off box in town in Yarrington at their smoke shop. They did not get that at all, but they did get election day, so they did not get everything they asked for either. And then the Summit Lake Paiute tribe in Washoe County, they got everything they asked for, plus a little bit more. So of those 11 tribes that followed state law, followed the process, submitted their application or their notification on time, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were given everything that they asked for. And so that's why we're bringing this opt-out measure. One of the things we kept hearing from the county clerks is they didn't have the staffing or the budget to accommodate the request at the late notice. So the application deadline for the polling location is August 1. And so, a couple months out from the election, they were saying it's too hard to accommodate. So the thought is if we revise the bill, the law to require the county clerks to, or allow the tribes to opt out, so they automatically get the polling place location for what the county seat receives 2 weeks of early vote and election day, then the county clerks can budget and plan accordingly. If the tribes choose to opt out, they can opt out if they don't want a polling location. In my former capacity as a tribal liaison, I met with all the tribal councils and spoke to them about their options for reservation-based polling locations. A lot of them didn't know. A lot of councils weren't familiar that this was an option for them. And so as we sat and had those conversations, every council that I spoke with were interested in having a polling location. They usually have to go through a formal process of getting permission, formal at a council meeting to vote on it. So there were, of the 28 federally recognized bands, tribes, and colonies, 18 have already have established polling locations, whether that's early vote or election day. So that leaves us a difference of 10 who have applied and haven't received or are still working towards that process. There are a couple tribes who have said that they're not interested in having a reservation-based polling location, whether that they're close to an existing polling location, but support this measure as recognizing that it will support other tribes in the state. And then with that, I wanted to turn off my mic and hand it over to Vice Chair Arnold Thomas to just share a few words about the experience of the Duck Valley Shoshone tribe this past election cycle.
Good afternoon, fellow politicians. Again, as Teresa mentioned, I am the vice chairman of the Shoshone Paiute Tribes in Duck Valley. 100 miles north of Elko. Some say it's God's country, but all Nevada's God's country, right? So nonetheless, 100 miles nearest voting booth. I'm a little bit dumbfounded how we never had voting until last year, a voting booth. We had mail-in voting, so I have a master's degree from the University of Utah. I'm also a certified chaplain, and through my faith tradition, I'm ordained as a holy one. So my travel throughout the world has offered me different opportunities in working with veterans and other individuals within my profession. I get to the point where I almost flabbergasted that we never had a voting booth on the reservation. And as Teresa mentioned, we took Elko County to court and sued them. Back in 2020, we applied and we were denied. So here back in August, we applied again and we were denied. We were only given a couple of days, but for me, it wasn't sufficient. We talked about choices in the last bill that was approved. That's why I believe a lot of our relatives and some of your ancestors traveled here. Religious freedom and justice. And to me, looking at it as in a spiritual religious context, it's the injustice that has occurred. And it's been rectified. We heard many reasons why we could not have a voting booth there in Duck Valley. As Teresa mentioned, I won't go into that. But one of the issues that we encountered and we addressed with the Secretary of State's office was to transfer the voting box on the last day elections to Elko County. So the BAA law enforcement governs our Duck Valley Reservation, and we were told by the BAA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, that they could not transfer the voting box to Elko. They did not want the responsibility. So we had to reach out to Elko County Clerk's office. They did not want to transfer the box. Given the current climate with voting and all that's happened, we had to call the Secretary of State's office to request that they speak with Elko County Clerk's office to transfer the box. So after much discussion, they had a state patrol officer come up and they transferred the voting box to Elko County. So Secretary of State's office is willing to work with us in Duck Valley as a pilot project. 2022, last year, it was awesome to see our senior citizens actually be able to vote, travel 2 blocks to vote, travel a mile to vote, rather traveling an hour south to Elko to vote. It was a very historical, momentous time for our people. And so the bill here that's before you, it's given those other tribal nations in Nevada opportunity, as tribal nations with their sovereignty, having that choice to opt in or opt out. I think you have an awesome opportunity here to exercise that ability you've been given, that God-given ability you've been given. So in a short, I don't want to go on about the challenges, the threats that we had regarding wanting a voting booth in Duck Valley. So thank you.
And that's all we have for our presentation.
And thank you. So you don't have any other presenters? Okay, very good. So at this time, we'll open it up to questions. So don't leave just yet. Any questions from the committee? No. I do just have a couple. Just in some of your presentation answered my one question on why we're going to the automatic, and you answered my question is that, yes, there were denials, there were requests made and denials and various things. And as I read the amendment, I think it is a little better, a little more prescriptive on the opting out. In other words, there has to be action taken on behalf of the tribe and get information to the clerk so they know. And if they don't receive that information, then that's triggers the opt-out. So one question just for my information. Were most of the reservations, for instance, Duck Valley, were they all mail-in precincts or ballots before? Do they still have I mean, everyone's getting the mail-in ballot, so they have the mail-in option. But the in-person voting, some people prefer. So what was it before? Did they have to drive to Elko, or did they use the mail option?
So there are 28 tribes and colonies, 28 federally recognized tribes, bands, and colonies, and so it's different for each one. There's some tribes who've had reservation-based polling locations for a number of years and have a very efficient system, like the Washoe County Clerk is like our gold star. We could replicate that system across the state, that'd be amazing. And so, Reno Sparks, Summit Lake, Pyramid Lake in Washoe County, we're trying to replicate that model across the state. And so, they've had in-person voting for a number of election cycles. A lot of our remote tribes, like Duckwater, the chairman from Duckwater is here, Duck Valley, McDermott, Yamba, some of those tribes, folks have to drive 3 hours round trip to vote. And a lot of those folks have been most of them have been voting by mail or driving all the way to Elko or Tonopah or Winnemucca to vote. And those are the areas where we've had the most challenges with securing polling locations. Did that answer your question?
Yes, you did. And so,
Yeah.
no, did you have something to add?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we had a councilman that was elected here, previous chairman over all the years, and like Teresa mentioned, a lot of the tribal members, well, not a lot, but a handful were doing the mail-in ballots, and so the councilman came in here in October when we were having the voting, and he was quite excited. He goes, I typically send in my ballot, but me, my wife, and my children, we're going to take it right down to the voting booths right downtown here in Owyhee, Nevada, and we're placing it in the box. And he was quite ecstatic. He's been a leader for 40 years, and so that was awesome to see that that opportunity and the joy in that elder politician's eyes and excitement, and whereas. Like you mentioned, within an urban setting here, it's a little different, and just having that opportunity that rather than mailing it in, they had the opportunity to drop it in the box.
And so just follow up on mine. Logistically, separate question, where a tribe is in one or more counties. So I'm assuming that if you wanted to have, if there was enough population, or if it was just a little bit or no population in one county, you would only send the request into the one county where because if there were actual people in the other county, they would have to go to that county's polling location. You can't cross those lines, at least my understanding. So you would have to put it into both counties if it crossed or if you went over a county line as far as the reservation goes. And I think the Pyramid Lake Reservation crosses over county lines,
Yep.
I believe. Washoe and Lyon, I think.
I'll do you one better here.
No, they don't,
Yeah,
okay.
I'll do you one better. So up in Duck Valley in Owyhee, so Idaho, some of our tribal members and residents live in Idaho. So our sovereign nation is Idaho borders Duck Valley, and then the other half, Nevada borders it. You're saying that doesn't make sense. Well, so there was, so we established with the Secretary's office and with our situation there, we have a tribal election committee that's sworn into office with the approval with the clerks and SOS office. We established residency with our tribal enrollment office, and then with our election committee members to stamp in that we actually had valid residents that lived in Nevada, given their tribal ID addresses, and we validated who lived in Nevada. And in the SOS office, they're going to make Duck Valley a pilot project. They'll be traveling up here. I believe he just stated at the end of April because of what we established there. And Teresa could probably elaborate on the other 27 tribes in Nevada.
And I'll just real quickly add to that. He brought up a great point I hadn't thought about. There are 3 tribes that have boundaries in 2 states. So Duck Valley, Idaho, Nevada, Goshute, Utah, Nevada, Washoe Tribe, California and Nevada, and McDermott, Oregon and Nevada. Summit Lake might even, are you a part in Oregon too? Okay, so there's several tribes, but all of the tribes that I'm familiar with, they're all in the same counties when it comes to elections. So we haven't had to have any tribe apply to 2 counties for a polling location. Duck Valley, I mean, is a unique situation. It's why Vice Chair Arnold Thomas drove 7 hours to come be here today to give testimony, to speak with you all, because their reservation kind of like had a culmination of all the issues that we see in native vote issues. A polling location is been historic for several of these tribes. You know, we had 10 tribes apply for the first time ever, and you know, people are very proud to be able to vote in their community and to have access to voting, easy access to voting, which we know is the #1 determinant whether or not people vote. Mailing system, the mail system is not as accessible on reservations as it is everywhere else. The chairman from Duckwater could probably attest to that in his testimony, but some of these tribes don't get daily mail, and so mail-in voting is a little bit more complicated. And then what we've also seen is in Nevada, you can register to vote with your tribal ID. We have had challenges where folks have been turned away using their tribal ID at the polling locations. Sometimes poll workers aren't aware or trained accurately, but we don't have that situation when they're voting on the reservation. Usually when we have polling locations on reservations, there's also natives from that community working the poll, and they're very familiar with tribal IDs, and they're not turning away. So we have less instances of native voters being turned away at the polls when they're able to vote on their own reservation. So another reason making it easier to vote. So if there aren't any more questions, I think we covered the basics.
One more,
Oh,
sorry.
okay.
And maybe it's an answer for that one of the clerks can answer as well. So I just want to be clear, so when we pass this the way it is and you have the opt-out by not sending information in a timely fashion, is the requirement to have the polling location open all the times, normal hours, during early voting and then election day, unless your request comes in and you say, I only need a drop box or I only need election day. So they should plan on all 2 weeks of the early voting and a drop box, et cetera. And I was going to mention the mail thing, the drop box, even if they don't want to necessarily do it in person, they've got their envelope, they can do the drop box, then you're not dealing with the mail at least one way. So you answer if you want to go ahead and answer that for the record verbally, would be great.
Yep, that's correct. So what we're asking for is 2 weeks of early vote, election day, and the ballot drop-off for each of the tribes. That's the opt-out version. They get everything that the county seat gets, but the tribes can opt out fully. They don't want a ballot drop-off, no polling location, no ballot drop-off, or they can scale back. So if, like this year, Fallon had, I think, 3 days of early voting in 2 weeks. So, you know, whatever variation that may look like. They might just want 1 day or 1 week early vote or just election day, but they can scale back. But the option is the full 2 weeks and election day and a ballot drop-off box. Yes, sir.
Excellent, thank you. I don't have any more questions unless.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. So Nevada, majority of the state is on the Pacific time zone. So up in Oahe, Duck Valley, it's interesting because we're on Mountain Standard Time Zone. So we actually had to sue Elko County for a few extra hours. We followed the law to the T, all the regulations that Elko County has set in place, and to ensure everything's done correctly. But at the end of the day, we had to file another lawsuit requesting that we get the additional hours, because when the voting booth closed in Elko, whether it be like 7 o'clock, we were losing an hour because it was were our head. So we sued them and we never got a response. But we just want one equality similar to what Elko County has and other counties have for voting.
Very good, thank you. So if there's nothing more, no questions, I didn't see any, if you guys want to sit back, and we'll take testimony in support. So anyone that wants to speak in support, come on up. And there's 3 chairs, so feel free to fill them up if there's more than one person.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randy Lone Eagle. I'm the tribal chairman for the Summit Lake Paiute Tribe, and I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to come and give some testimony today. So Summit Lake was one of the 10 locations that was a first-time polling location. We've also had a great turnout with that as far as our tribal membership and non-tribal members that took part because of where we are located for our administration office in Sparks, Nevada. We also, our reservation is in Humboldt County, so we deal with Washoe County and Humboldt County. We had a great working relationship with Washoe County, no issues there. Humboldt County was a little reluctant and, well, there's already, said polling locations. I said, that's fine. We'll just deal with Washoe County. So it was a great turnout, and our tribal membership were really in support of us having that location for them to actually go in person, cast their ballot, or submit in, with the drop box. And we were to have the full 2 weeks plus the election day and the early voting time frame. So that was great for us to have that, and we had access to that. So I'm in support of the current bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Warren Graham, W-A-R-R-E-N, Graham, G-R-A-H-A-M. I am the chairman for the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe, also the vice president for the Intertribal Council of Nevada, and I also work for the tribe as their tribal historic preservation officer. Anyway, I'm here to give testimony in support of Senate Bill 327, Native American voting. In Duckwater, we have already established a polling station, and we have a good relationship with the Nye County Clerk's office. I'm going to give a little story about how this year we have so many members that are fluent in our native language that we're eligible to have a Native American translator for our elders. So we are able to do that because some of the elders, English is their second language, Shoshone, our native language, is their first language, what they grew up with in their households. So they don't sometimes understand, what this position is or what this position is, but we were able to have a Shoshone translator that translated Shoshone English words into Shoshone so they could understand what these positions were for. And that's all I wanted to say, but thank you again, and the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe is in support of this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Will Adler, and I work with Silver State Government Relations. We work with Duckwater Reservation as well as Duck Valley and Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. I would like to share a couple stories about Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. They were the first Native American reservation to really take a big stance for voting rights and activate on these issues. And in that way, they opened that door and they opened the talking point to me that, what is voting in Nevada and what is equality under voting. When they pointed out that they had to drive 90 minutes from most of their reservation to get to Sparks to actually vote and then drive back. And this was before mail-in voting, and this was before a lot of the drop box things were available at the time. And they made a very good case for themselves getting actual access to voting on site. And Washoe County actually worked with them quite well to get the voting station there, and they're really proud of the efforts they have. But in my time, I've actually started working with more and additional Native American territories around Nevada, and it turns out 90 minutes is not that far a drive for some of these tribal communities when it comes to voting and voting access. So I would encourage everyone to look at this bill and sort of look at it as a, equality under law, because voting is a big part of what it is to be American, not just, is this a tribal access thing, but it is a right to be a voter in this democracy. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Vice Chair, for the opportunity to speak. I'm Andrea Martinez, the treasurer of the Walker River Paiute Tribe. The Walker River Paiute Tribe already has a polling location on our reservation since I can remember, but I think it's important that we support other tribes and reservations to have the same and equal opportunities as the state and counties, and I support SB 327. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Willett, and I'm the grassroots manager at All Voting is Local Action, an organization that exists to expose and dismantle threats to voter freedom in order to make voting fair, safe, and accessible to build a democracy for us all. We are here in strong support of SB 327. Tribal nations face persistent and longstanding barriers to voting access. In 2021, the Nevada Legislature passed a bill that allowed tribes to request a polling place, as we've heard. While that was progress, barriers remain in the 2022 election. As the law is currently written, tribal nations apply for a polling place, and the clerk has discretion over dates and times of the polling place. In many instances, the clerk worked with the tribal nation to determine what was best for the tribal nation. But in other cases, the clerk offered days and times for polling places that were not sufficient or convenient for the tribal nation's needs. And in other cases, as you heard, the clerk did not respond to some tribal nations' applications or rejected their requests. So there was no polling place at their tribal nation, despite the fact that the tribes followed the law. By changing the law from an application process by tribes to an opt-out process, polling place establishment will be driven by tribal nations because they know what they need in their communities. So we urge you to support SB 327 to support equitable access to voting for Nevada's tribal nations. And we want to sincerely thank Senator Orenshaw for sponsoring the bill, and the clerks and the Secretary of State's office for helping define the components in the bill in ways that work. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Gabriel DeCara. I am the Chief Deputy Secretary of State. I'm testifying in support on behalf of Secretary Francisco Aguilar. Secretary Aguilar has made expanding access to tribal communities a large part of his priority now that he is in office. We are thankful that this bill has been brought forward. We believe that these changes would go a long way towards expanding access to our Native communities. And he has also instructed our office to work closely with the clerks to provide them the support that they need from the state as well to make this happen. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else in Carson City here that wishes to speak in support? All right, seeing none, broadcast, if we can go to the phones to see if there's anyone on the phone lines to speak in support of Senate Bill 327.
Testify in support of SB 327. Press star now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in support at this time.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll take any testimony in opposition to Senate Bill 327. Seeing none coming up, is there anyone on the phone lines in opposition? Broadcasting.
If you'd like to testify in opposition of SB 327, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers in opposition at this time.
Thank you. Then we'll take testimony in neutral on Senate Bill 327.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair, Committee. Jamie Rodriguez, Registrar of Voters for Washoe County. Here in neutral, I really want to thank Senator Orenshaw, Teresa, Jennifer from All Voting is Local. We had some really great conversations about the reason for the bill and completely understand and support the reason for the bill. We did have some discussions about a couple of small tweaks that you see in the amendment, talking about if we're changing to an opt-out, that's great, but we do need to know the details of the location so that we can support it. We can make sure that we're still meeting all of our federal requirements of ADA compliance and those types of issues. So, we had a great conversation. We were able to add Summit Lake Paiute Tribe this election cycle. They'd originally asked for a drop box. When we did the on-site visit, the original space they were planning for wasn't large enough, and they said, oh, it's okay, we have this other room over here. We went and looked at that and said, great, we can do a drop box. We can also do in-person voting in this size of a room. So really happy that we were able to actually expand it from their original request of a mail ballot drop box to a full vote center, originally just for early voting, and then able to expand that actually for election day as well. So I think it was really great, but making sure that we have those details is really vital to our ability to support those locations. Also really important to note, the need for election workers. Our relationship with Pyramid Lake is a very long one in Washoe County, but Pyramid Lake really advocates that they do their own recruitment for their own election workers. They really want it to be their tribal members who are greeting their tribal members who are coming to vote. And so we absolutely support and want to be completely respectful of those desires of the tribe. So having those pieces of information are really, really important. There's also been some conversation about the timeline for that opt-out. It is fairly close to the election when you look at everything else that we have to do to support it. So making sure that those vote centers are printed, in the sample ballot. Those sample ballots go to print at least 60 days before early voting starts. So those timelines are a little close. We also have to bring the early vote locations to the Board of County Commissioners for approval. So there's a couple of those things. So we do really appreciate the proponents hearing us out and addressing those in the amendment and the bill that's before you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Amy Bergens, Douglas County Clerk Treasurer, and I'm going to speak first as the Clerk Treasurer, but I'm also on the board for the Nevada Association of County Clerks and Election Officials, so I'm going to also give a little bit of testimony on behalf of the rural counties on the impact of this bill. And of course, I am testifying in neutral. As the Douglas County Clerk Treasurer, I will tell you that we have a great relationship with our Washoe tribe. We have a polling location, and it's every time. We reach out to them. They have a great location. We have Election Day voting. We also have a drop box that we take to the location on a set schedule throughout early voting so that it can be used not only by the tribal members, but also it happens to be in the middle of one of our largest housing developments in Douglas County, so it works really well. It's our second largest or second most used voting location on Election Day because of the convenience, not only for the tribe, but also for the residents in Douglas County. So we don't plan on changing that. We love that location, and we love the relationship that we have with our Washoe tribal members. And also I just because it's been stated earlier, I have staff members that work there at the 2020 election, which we all know the 2020 election was just such a big election for the country that there were a lot of tribal members that were there voting for the first time that were of an increased age. And we do, it's a big deal when someone's a first-time voter. So when we find out that someone's a first-time voter when they're either registering or coming in to check in, everyone applauds for them, all of our election workers and everything. So it's a big deal. And there was some tearful moments at the 2020 election at that tribal location. So moving on to the bill itself and the impact on the rurals. I would say, as Jamie stated earlier, one of the toughest parts is where the rural tribes are located is getting poll workers. If we could have some type of a amendment to this that created more of a relationship that assisted us with getting tribal members that were willing to be trained, even if that means that the training had to go to their location to train them in advance. Something that just assisted the clerks to be able to get election workers that were willing to work on the tribal, at the tribal location, that would be great. Also, like Jamie said, the 3 months is a very tight time frame. By then, our sample ballot it's not completed, but it's ready. All we have to do is plug in any kind of minor tweaks. An additional location that we haven't vetted and checked to make sure that it follows all of the statutes that we have to follow for ADA compliance and everything else that is needed. It makes it very difficult with only 3 months in advance. Like I said, on behalf of the rurals, we want to make this happen. We just need the time frame to be able to make it happen. So if we could increase that 3 months, that would be a huge benefit to the county clerks. So thank you very much for your time.
Just a question on that last part of it. So if this passes, there's not going to be another election until 2024. Seems to me that the time frame is actually pretty long. You should anticipate that you're going to have to do this. And then they're going to get you that information 30 days. So you should be, seems to me, working on it, reaching out ahead of time and planning on it well ahead. And then if you don't get the information, then you can say, hey, I dropped this off my list. Nothing preventing you from going sooner. I would recommend you pass that on to all of your clerks to say, you know, if this gets enacted, start working early. Don't not plan and say, oh, I got this information now 3 months ahead, and that's the first time you start working on it. I think that would be your flaw or their fault if they did that. And it sounded to me like most of the tribes are already looking for poll workers. If it's a matter of training, I agree there has to be some, and I'm glad to hear that you said you know most of the clerks are ready to go out and do that training. But there's nothing in this stopping people if it's passed and goes into effect, even if it doesn't go into effect till January 1st, it still gives you 9 months before the date. So
I completely agree that it is incumbent upon us to be reaching out to the tribes. And as far as poll workers, I know that was with, and I apologize, I can't remember which county it was, but that was the biggest hiccup that they had, was they could not find any poll workers to go to the location. And if they could have just gotten some poll workers that were willing to go to the location, they would have been more than happy to have made it more available for a longer amount of time than what they were able to do.
not seeing anyone else here in Carson City in neutral. Broadcasting, do we have anyone on the phones in neutral?
If you'd like to testify in neutral, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in neutral.
Thank you. Do you have any closing remarks or?
Yes, I just wanted to close by thanking the committee for hearing the bill and this testimony, and of course, thank Senator Orenshaw for his work on this bill and for carrying this bill. And several of the issues that were addressed during our neutral testimony, I think are going to be addressed in SB 216, which we're going to hear next. So I think it's a great segue. But the last representative from Douglas County, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, but she talked about how moving it was seeing, folks vote for the first time. And I've been working as a native vote advocate for a couple election cycles. And there have been several times where I was brought to tears, and I didn't think, access to democracy would cause me to get emotional. But there were several times, especially this last election cycle, where, folks were sending me photos and videos from the Duckwater Shoshone tribe showing elders who had voted for the first time and voting in Shoshone and working with a translator and just watching the video, like rural Nevada. And we're one of the few places in the country where Indigenous people can vote in their original language. That's not a common thing, but by federal law, that Shoshone Paiute tribes have enough fluent speakers that they had that right. And then we saw that again. There were stories coming out of Elko tribe, Timuc tribe, Shoshone and Elko band had a polling location, and I got some pictures. One of my staff, she sent me a picture of her grandma who had voted for the first time, and she was in her 80s. The last time she had tried to vote was when she was a student at Stewart Indian Colony boarding school, and she had been refused at the polls and never tried to vote again. And there were several stories about people trying to vote when they were young and then they never attempted again until they were able to vote on their polling on the reservation where they felt safe. They weren't worried about voter intimidation. They knew that they were often natives working at the poll. They felt safe to vote there. So voting may not be like exciting for some people, but it's been, it's been really beautiful to watch some of the people in the most remote areas of the state, the original people of this land, to have improved access to voting. And so thank you for your time and thank you for hearing this bill.
Thank you. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 327, and we'll open the hearing on Senate Bill 216, so don't go far. So if you're ready to start on 216, please proceed.
And I'm back. Again, my name is, for the record, my name is Teresa Melendez. I'm an Indigenous organizer and Native vote advocate here in the state of Nevada. And I want to thank Vice Chair Daly and members of the committee for hearing this bill. I'm pleased the opportunity to present Senate Bill 216 before you today. This bill establishes provisions related to elections, specifically for tribal citizens and community members who call one of our Nevada reservations their home. As I did with the last bill, I'd like to recognize the tribal council folks who are in the room, for those who may have just joined us. I'd like to recognize Chairman Warren Graham of the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe, if you could please stand. I'd like to recognize Chairwoman Randy Lone Eagle of the Summit Lake Paiute Tribe. I'd like to recognize Vice Chair Arnold Thomas of the Shoshone Paiute Tribes of the Duck Valley Indian Reservation. I'd also like to recognize Treasurer Andrea Martinez of the Walker River Paiute Tribe. We have 4 tribal council members here with us today showing their support for voting rights access for Native people on reservations. This is the most number of elected tribal council members we've had at a bill hearing this session. So really grateful that they've, and Vice Chair Arnold Thomas traveled all the way from Hawaii, which is on the Idaho border, an hour and a half north, Elko, just to be here today. So really grateful he's here. All right, so a little background information. Senate bill, and this bill really does, I think, cover all the questions that were in the preceding bill, yes. So Senate Bill 216 comes to this committee from the 2021-2022 Joint Interim Standing Committee on Legislative Operations and Elections. It is a product of discussions held during the meetings of the interim committee regarding difficulties faced by members of tribal nations in the state when voting or registering to vote. The interim committee heard testimony from the Nevada Indian Commission and tribal members, whose concerns the interim committee took into consideration when voting to draft legislation for the 2023 session. Tribal citizens have historically faced high barriers to participating in the voting process due to the remote location of tribal lands. 24 of the 28 federally recognized tribal nations in Nevada are more than an hour drive from a community of 10,000 people or more. We have also heard from the Nevada Indian Commission that with the high amount of turnover among the county clerks, it has been difficult for tribal leaders and citizens who are engaged in voter outreach to maintain relationships with local election officials. Additionally, some tribal nations are not in contact with their city or county clerk at all, meaning their needs or concerns are not a part of the conversation when it comes to election administration. Senate Bill 216 would require regular communication between county and city clerks and tribal nations within their jurisdiction to ensure tribal nations are continually included in conversations surrounding voter participation and access. I'd also like to add that there's often quite a bit of turnover in our tribal nations. We have a large Native population here in Nevada. We have one of the largest Native populations in the country. I think we're number 7. And so we have elections just like any other government, and we have quite a bit of turnover also. In sections of the bill. Section 2 and 4 of the bill require county and city clerks to establish and maintain a working relationship with Indian tribes within the county or city jurisdiction. Again, the intent is to ensure tribal nations are a part of the conversation, able to provide input or receive information and support. The bill puts the onus on the city and county clerks, the officials responsible for administering elections in the state, to regularly reach out to tribal nations. It will take effort on behalf of both parties to foster a working relationship. However, the initial contact and frequent follow-up should come from the city and county clerks, who have the resources to contact the tribes and the responsibility to administer elections for all eligible voters in the state. There is an amendment on Nellis for the section that outlines the meeting schedule and deadline for this relationship. This schedule was developed through meetings with the clerks. Specifically, we were working with Jamie with Washoe County Clerk, and really grateful for her serving as a liaison with the nonprofits and other groups who are working on this bill. Section 3 of the bill allows an Indian tribe to submit a request to the Secretary of State for a tribal ID card to be recognized and accepted through Nevada's online voter registration system. There is an amendment to remove this section. Instead, the Secretary of State's office will be conducting a pilot to find the best solution to incorporate tribal IDs into Nevada's online voter registration system. In addition, there are two other points including in the amendment to facilitate these processes. Nevada's EASE system will be expanded to include tribal nation members, which will support voting extremely remote communities. Secondly, the bill creates a standalone tribal liaison position in the Secretary of State's office to facilitate polling place establishment. And so those are all of the updates for that bill. And I just want to add a few thoughts about the tribal liaison position. We heard yesterday about a bill that would establish tribal liaisons for state departments. Currently, there is an existing law. But often, I mean, it was an unfunded mandate, and so the bill that we heard last night would require paid full-time positions for tribal liaisons in state departments. Over the years, there's been so many times where if there was a tribal liaison within the SOS department, that would facilitate this process and make it so much easier. We have a very large Native population in the state. It takes a lot of work to maintain all of those relationships and contacts, and having a designated tribal liaison within the Secretary of State's office would help the tribes and the county clerks make sure the process is more streamlined and that communication is maintained. So with that, I wanted to invite Vice Chair Arnold Thomas. I know you shared some of your thoughts on this topic in the last bill, SB 327, but was there anything else that you wanted to share on this bill? Okay.
Again, good afternoon, and thank you, fellow politicians. Well, it sounds really simple and easy. I like that, how it sounds. And for years, I voted in another state where I resided. You travel a few, about 4 blocks down to the local elementary school and vote. I know Teresa, along with all those other individuals, have worked diligently along with Orange Shaw's office, on drafting this bill. You know, and it's really unfortunate that we've had to sue Elko County, and it was a very rigorous process. As the politician serving in my 6th year, it was very taxing for a chairman and myself. Travel to and fro Elko, and testify and be at the hearing, and it didn't stop there. And this bill is awesome, because it's going to ensure again that the clerks with funding, the goal would be to actually have clerks trained that would be in Owyhee, Duck Valley, and they could serve numerous roles as a clerk in Duck Valley. And that was proposed with funding. We do We did have co-workers, tribal members that were there, and we have other members that are excited for future elections to be a part of this impact in our state and in the country on electing who should serve. Also, again, we're excited to be a pilot project in Duck Valley for the Secretary of State's office. And again, I just want to thank you, Vice Chair, and the fellow politicians and the tribal leaders that are here. I would like to close lastly with that as a chaplain and serving with other chaplains within the Department of Veterans Affairs and other religions, I come to the understanding with this teaching as politicians, it's the highest form of spirituality one can serve in. And some question, how is that so? Because we're elected by the people to serve the people. It's not what we want or what we need, but what is right to do for the people, and that's duty. And when you're serving in a manner that takes care of all the people, not just white, black, red, or yellow, mankind, but serving all the people, it's the right thing to do, and that's connected and tied into that symbol of democracy, that bald eagle democracy, in the true sense of what it is to serve the people. So thank you.
Thank you. Is that it for your presentation? Okay, so any questions from the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Actually, I have a question about the fiscal note, so when we move to that, so that's probably for the Secretary of State. There's pretty substantial fiscal note on this. Thanks.
And I think they'll probably come up. If you want to come up now, that's perfectly fine. Make sure you state your name for the record, please.
Thank you. So my question was about the fiscal note because it was pretty substantial and it had to do with the IDs and so forth. So I didn't know if you were considering revising that fiscal note or keeping that fiscal note if you had the ability to do it within house.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Senator Gansert. Gabriel DeCara from the Secretary of State's office for the record. So I believe, and my elections deputy is actually testifying on another bill right now, answering similar questions, I'm sure. I believe that fiscal note would be the note that would set up the alternative process that we discussed to allow tribal ID use for online voter registration. There would be an IT project that we would have to work out in order to allow for our system to take in tribal IDs. Right now, our online voter registration system goes through the DMV, and so it's a direct link between when someone uses a Nevada ID to register, their ID is checked by the DMV, and that is how the process works. This would be setting up a new system, and so that fiscal note would be for the staff time, hardware, software, et cetera, to modify our system to accept tribal IDs from any of the 28 tribes and bands.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And along those lines, so and I'm familiar with the DMV process, having showed people how to do and register online and various things, and they'll bring forward, if they have a driver's license, they'll bring up that signature off of the driver's license information. You verify that that's the signature, and it's similar process when you go to vote. They have the electronic voter rolls. So when you come in and say who you are, they scan the sample ballot. It brings up your information, and when you sign, they compare that signature at that time, right? So that was one of my questions, is that the tribes are going to have to work with the Secretary of State in order to build that voter roll system using the tribal IDs. That's where the fiscal note came from. And with 3 coming out, when do you expect that we're going to be able to have that, or how long is it going to take? And obviously there's an expenditure to do that. So
Yes, sir. Senator Daley, thank you for the question. So again, the vice chairman has kindly offered to use the Duck Valley tribe as a pilot program. So we will be able to work with them directly in talking with our IT staff and our election staff. We believe that once we solve this problem for a single tribe, a single tribal ID, it would be very easily to expand it to the 27 others. Do you want to?
So the current conversation was to.
Make sure you
Yep.
state your name.
For the record, my name is Teresa Melendez. And the conversation for this legislative session is to take the fiscal note out for the tribal IDs because we want to run the pilot project first and then come back in 2 years and revisit that.
Gabriel DeCara from the Secretary of State's Office of the Record. I apologize. There are a number of bills and budgets in my head right now. I believe that we may have budgeted for that pilot program in our agency budget, but I can work with my elections deputy to find the details and send the answer to this committee.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Vice Chair Daley. Any further questions, Senator Sievers-Gansert?
Thank you. No, I don't have another question, but I think Senator Krasner may.
Thank you, Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair Orenshaw. So that's great that you're going to remove the fiscal note, and I'm so excited to hear that Secretary of State Aguilar is really invested in making this work. And could you get back to us, just the members of the committee, and let us know, since you said you're unsure right now because you have so many things in your head? I'd sure appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, Senator Krasner, absolutely. And apologies again for not having that off the top of my head.
Please go ahead, Ms. Melendez.
Thank you. Teresa Melendez, for the record. So there would be the fiscal note for the tribal liaison position, just not the tribal ID part. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Melendez. Thank you, Chief Deputy. Go ahead, Chief Deputy.
Thank you, Gabriel DeCara, for the record. So, and I want to emphasize that tribal liaison position, that's set to be I believe we set that at the level of a program officer 1. That's a state employee level who could truly run a program, as opposed to an employee who would just be following directions. The program officer would really be able to make the relationships between the tribes and the Secretary of State's office their own. That would have the benefit of not just being helpful in terms of elections, that would help in terms of business licensing, in terms of all of the other divisions that the Secretary of State's office oversees. We want to build our relationships with tribal governments across the board.
Thank you very much, Chief Deputy. I have a question from Senator Daley.
Just comment more, and I just want to make sure I'm following the amendment as we have here. So you're going to delete all of Section 3, and we're working on the pilot program. But then we're going to add in the scheduling and the when you're going to meet, topics to be discussed in Section 2 that you guys worked out with the various things. And I just want to make sure, so as we talked about in the last bill, that dovetails in with that planning. There shouldn't be any surprises. You should plan on this, and you should have an ongoing process where that's happening. And then if somebody doesn't give you the additional information, you know, that'll be a surprise, I think, especially if you've been planning this stuff for a year. So that's in the intended way you're going to have work. In other words, there are not going to be any surprises. There shouldn't be. And county clerk's going to have no excuses.
That's the plan. So Jennifer with All Voting is Local and Jamie with the Washoe County Clerk and I, we had some meetings and we all huddled back with our teams. We came back together, and so what we came up with was on odd years, the county clerks would reach out to the tribal nations in their counties. And so, you know, that give them between July and December, it'd give them good 6 months to make that communication. And then to discuss those very same things. Who's going to be recruiting poll workers? Are you taking the opt-out? And so you're going to take the polling location for which days, so we know what the staffing looks like, so we know what the equipment looks like. So taking care of all those logistics on the odd year, knowing the elections are on the even years, and then the meeting again in the first quarter of the even year to revisit the last meeting, and then, you know, that gives folks a good 10 months or so to plan for the upcoming election.
Thank you very much, Ms. Melendez. Senator Daley, any further questions? All right. Well, I really appreciate the presentation here. Thank you so much. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Just for the record, Arnold Thomas, Vice Chairman, Duck Valley, Shoshone Paiute Tribes. There was a statement made earlier that, well, I think it's between me and Chairman Warren Graham who travel the farthest, because there's Duck Water, which is south of Elko, and then as a crow flies, and then we're north, we're Duck Valley. Just for clarification, some of you might think there's two ducks, but nonetheless, we're from Nevada. Tribal ID. I'm a maverick as a politician, so I use my tribal ID. It's a federal issued ID. When I get on the plane at any airport, I do not show my Nevada state ID. No disrespect to Nevada, but I use my tribal ID because it is issued as a tribal nation. So airports throughout the country recognize it, the FFA, and then when we travel up into Canada via ground, immigrations, they also acknowledge it and recognize it, and we could get across the border. But I know sometimes it's challenging when you come back from Canada into the United States. For whatever reason, sometimes they'll question question the ID if they're new, but a lot of that has been ironed out. So the tribal IDs, they are a valid ID. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Chairman. Ms. Melendez, did you have any other comment? No. All right. Any other questions, members? All right, not seeing any other questions, then we will go to support of Senate Bill 327. Anyone who'd like to speak in support here in Carson City? And after that, we'll go down to the phone lines.
Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee, Gabriel DeCara, for the record, testifying in support on behalf of Secretary of State Francisco Aguilar. Again, similarly, Secretary Aguilar believes very strongly in expanding access and building relationships between our tribes and clerks, and doing whatever the Secretary of State's office can to expand access to the ballot for all eligible voters, and so he stands in support of this bill. Thank you
very much, Chief Deputy Secretary of State. We appreciate you and Secretary of State Aguilar's help on this legislation. Please state your name for the record and proceed. Whoever would like to begin.
Thank you, committee, and thank you, Chair. Andrea Martinez, Walker River Paiute Tribe Treasurer for the record. I'm here today to testify in support of SB 216 that will develop positive working relationships with tribes and prospective county clerks in working on elections to make it easier for tribal members to register to vote online, the online system as allowed under the auspices of the Secretary of the State's website. The Walker River Paiute Tribe has a great relationship with Mineral County Clerk's office when it comes to federal, state, and county elections. We've had precinct location on our reservation for as long as I can remember. Our tribe works with the county clerk to identify poll workers, have them trained, and work the polls during all elections. This allows for our tribal people to be comfortable when voting, and we always see a familiar face. This positive relationship ensures that our people have the same dates and times to vote as they do at the county seat in Hawthorne. Our tribe fought for the right to have early voting on our reservation and was fortunate to win a lawsuit against the county and the Secretary of State's office in 2016. This opened up the doors for other tribes to have the same rights, as it's important for all citizens of the state to have equal voting rights. The other part of this bill that is important for tribes is to work with the Secretary of the State's office to use tribal IDs for the purposes of registering to vote online. Even though tribal IDs are an acceptable ID to use to vote, they are not allowed to be used to register to vote on the online system. Thank you for your consideration of approving SB 216 that will further allow tribes to have equal voting access, but mainly to develop positive working relationships with the county clerks and the Secretary of the State's office. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Martinez. Thank you.
Hello, Will Adler for the record, working with Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, Duck Water, and Duck Valley tribal groups. I would just like to say that Nevada addressed tribal IDs through legislation back in 2015, and then I think in 17 as well, we did some updates. But really at that time, the intent was to designate them as an ID as similar to any other ID issued by any other government in the state of Nevada. So this is more of an update bill, or sort of keeping up with the times as I see it, because the utilization of an ID is only as far as you're allowed to use it. So at first it was to get access to banking and make sure it could be usable at the DMV, and then having voter rights was a big part of that inclusion as well. So the ability to register to vote as well is something that we'd like to look into, and I thank the Secretary of State's comments for attempting to get the fiscal note down, or do this in a pilot program to see what utilization could be done around this space. Thank you very much. Appreciate the bill.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adler. Appreciate your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Orenshaw, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Lanahan, Jenniferlanahan, and I am here to testify in support of SB 216 on behalf of the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe and the Reno Sparks Indian Colony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lanahan.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. For the record, my name is Warren Graham, W-A-R-R-E-N, Graham, G-R-A-H-A-M. I'm the tribal chairman for the Duckwater Shoshone Tribe. I'm also the vice president of the Intertribal Council of Nevada, and I also work for the tribe as a tribal historic preservation officer. I'm here today to support SB 216. Coming from Duckwater, we are a very rural tribe, so any type of system that's put in place for our voters to register or pre-register would be amazing. I mean, the challenges of going 2 hours to, I don't know, hour to 2 hours to go and register a vote is time consuming. Some people don't have access to vehicles. So I think any type of system that would help would be great. And especially the use of tribal IDs, which is a federally recognized ID. So thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for being here. Thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate getting to hear from you. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
For the record, my name is Randy Lonigo. I'm the tribal chairman for the Summit Lake Paiute Tribe, and I'm in support of Senate Bill 216 and just continuing the working relationship with the Secretary of State and the tribal nations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you so much for your testimony, for being here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Willett, W-I-L-L-E-T-T, and I am the grassroots manager at All Voting is Local Action, and we are here in support of SB 216. As you've heard, this bill is really intended to facilitate the establishment of the polling places. The first point is that the bill mandates that the clerk develop a relationship with the tribal nations in their county to determine how these relationships should function best to support polling place establishment, as we've discussed a little bit, but I wanted to highlight. We worked with the clerks to understand what they need and when, such as polling place location, needed times, days, and poll worker recruitment, and this is all in that very critical amendment to this bill. Secondly, it's amended to add the tribal liaison at the Secretary of State's office to support all of these processes. And finally, the expansion of the e-system will support tribal voting, particularly in nations that are extremely remote, and returning in-person ballots is a burden. Tribal nations, as we've heard, can be several hours away from their county seat, and because elections are held in November, poor weather conditions can affect travel. So expanding the e-system will give more options to vote for remote communities. So in conclusion, we urge you to support SB 216 to support equitable access to voting for Nevada's tribal nations. And since Senator Orenshaw is back, I'd like to thank you in person. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for all the collaboration with Secretary of State and the county clerks and all the different organizations. And welcome back, Majority Leader, and proud to see Case here to joining us today. Anyone else who would like to speak in support of the measure here in Carson City? If not, we will go to the phone lines. Broadcasting, if we can go to the phone lines.
To testify in support, press star 9 and take your place in the queue now. Again, to testify in support of SB 216, press star 9 and take your place in the queue.
Good evening, Chair and Committee. My name is Taylor Patterson. That's Taylorpatterson. I'm the Executive Director of Native Voters Alliance Nevada. We stand in full support of this bill. We have heard time and time again from our tribal governments how important it is to emphasize the relationship between the state of Nevada and their tribal governments. I think this bill will further help that. And with that, I think everybody else already said it better. So just ditto to all of the comments earlier. Thank you.
Broadcasting, is there anyone else on the phone lines who wishes to
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name for the record and proceed.
Yes, thank you. Chair and members of this committee, my name is Noel Orozco, that's Orosco, and I am the program manager of Silver State Voices, which leads the Let Nevadans Vote Coalition. SSV is in support of SB 216. This bill requires each county and city clerk to maintain a working relationship with every tribal nation in their respective county, and this aligns with the efforts of many tribal councils and ensures that county clerks reciprocate in building productive partnerships. And for that, SSV is in full support of this bill and just dittoing everything like the caller before me mentioned. Thank you.
There are no more callers at this time.
Thank you very much, Broadcasting. I'd like to come back to Carson City. Now go to opposition. Anyone who is opposed to Senate Bill 216 wants to be heard on the record in Carson City. I'm not seeing anyone broadcasting on the phone lines. Is there anyone in opposition who wants to be heard on Senate Bill 216?
To testify in opposition of SB 216, press star 9 to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in opposition at this time.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to go to neutral testimony on Senate Bill 216 here in Carson City. If you're neutral and would like to be heard, please come forward. Thanks for your patience.
Amy Bergens, Douglas County Clerk Treasurer. I just want to, I'm just going to keep this really short. As far as the amendments go, that's mostly what affects the clerks in the county. So I just want to say that I'm thankful and grateful for everyone in this room that has worked with us on amendments, and that I am eager to see what the final draft will look like.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the clerks for working with all the different organizations and trying to come up with common ground, an amendment that accomplishes the good policy objectives, but also is something that is workable. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you so much. Jamie Rodriguez, Registrar of Voters for Washoe County. Want to thank Senator Orenshaw and the proponents again for meeting with us to really understand what the intention of the bill was. I don't think we were totally clear in the original bill, so really glad that we were able to work through what the goal of the bill was so that we could give some better specifics as to what that needs to be. So appreciate working with them. So we'll continue to work with them in that final language. It was pointed out to me we are neutral. There is some overlap now in the timeline between this bill and the other bill, so we'll work with them to address those issues. But again, really want to thank everybody for working with us so we can make sure that we're meeting the intent of the legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Registrar. Don't see anyone else in neutral. Broadcasting on the phone lines, anyone who is neutral on Senate Bill 216 and wants to be heard.
To testify in neutral in SB 216, press star 9 and take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to testify in neutral.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to just ask our bill presenters, Ms. Melendez, Vice Chairman, anyone else who would like to make any closing comments? You don't have to, but you're welcome to if you'd like to.
This is Teresa Melendez for the record, and I think the closing comments from the last bill cover this one also. So again, just want to thank Senator Orenshaw and for carrying this bill, and I want to thank the clerks who have provided the necessary guidance and feedback and support through this process, and the C3 orgs who've been really kind and gracious with their support on this work also, and of course the committee. Miigwech.
Well, thank you for your excellent presentation. Again, appreciate the clerks, Secretary of State's office, and all the voting rights organizations working together. And with that, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 216. The last item on our agenda today is public comment. Anyone who wishes to make public comment, we're going to limit it to 2 minutes per speaker here in Carson City. You're not seeing anyone in Carson City Broadcasting. Is there anyone on the phone lines who wishes to make public comment? We are limiting it to 2 minutes per speaker.
If you'd like to provide public comment, press star 9 and take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no callers willing to provide public comment.
All right. Well, thank you very much, committee, for your patience and your attention. And thank you to our staff for working so hard to help get this meeting together. Our policy analyst, Barbara, Diane, Ann, our legal counsel. Thank you. And with that, we're adjourned. I'll see everyone on Tuesday.